and welcome to the Slumbering Sloth Book Nook, a podcast about all things books, publishing and more. My name is Emma and today my guest is Clem Flanagan. Clem is an editor at Hay House Books. Now on with the show. Welcome Clem, hello.
Hi.
Thank you for coming on today.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I'm really happy to be doing this.
Oh, thank you very much. I really appreciate it. So, first things first, can you tell us about your current role and what you do?
As you know, because you follow me on Twitter,
Yeah.
I literally just got promoted to editor at Hay House UK. I was assistant editor there before. I've been there maybe 20 months or so, maybe a little bit less, 18. Mostly what I was doing before was I sort of prepare all the advanced information sheets and sort of any copy about the books that the salespeople might need, because Editorial has kind of first contact with the books. I also write the blurbs for the books, so that's everything that goes on the back of the book. And then I also kind of check all of the files for the books before they go to print. So I just make sure like all the running heads are fine and the page numbers are fine and there are no no glaring typos, although I don't do a full edit. And yeah, that's mostly still what I'm doing.
Cool stuff. So as you say, because it's Editorial is the main sort of thing people think of when they go into publishing, isn't it? That's like the first role everyone thinks of, don't they?
Yeah, it's definitely what I first thought of, because I didn't really plan on going into publishing, and then in my final year at uni, I had a class that was on editing your book. I did English and creative writing. And that's when I first realised, oh, this is a job. I can do this. And I love correcting typos, so that sounds fantastic. And I can basically just have a desk job and not have to speak to anyone all day. Sounds ideal for me because I am such an introvert. And so I thought, great, I found my calling. And then I did a master's in publishing and realised, oh my God, everyone wants to do this.
Yeah. And
there are 200 applications for every editorial job that gets advertised. So I sort of shot myself in the foot, but decided to carry on anyway because it does really suit me. I've sort of looked at other aspects of publishing and just this was really my thing. So I'm glad I stuck with it.
Good. That's great to hear. Because you said Editorial is such a wide variety of different things going on all the time.
Yes. Yeah, it is actually quite a varied role, and it's not how I imagined it to be at first. Publishing industry has also evolved a lot, I would say, in the last 10 years, and the traditional role of the editor isn't really what it used to be anymore. It has been siloed in certain ways. Certain aspects of editorial are definitely just done by freelancers nowadays, and you don't really get to do it in the office for a publisher. But then you also are sort of at the heart of the publishing process, and that's really why I wanted to do it, because it's not just that you have first contact with the authors when you commission them, but you work on the books themselves, and everyone sort of comes to you for information about all the books. So it's not so much like being quiet at my desk and not speaking to anyone all day as I thought it would be, because you actually are sort of chatting to people all the time about what the books are like and any kind of information that other departments need. Everyone from like sales to publicity to artwork, they all kind of need editorial input to be able to do what they do.
You always bounce off everybody else, don't you? Sort of like in a team, you sort of like one person works with the other one, and it's always that relationship, isn't it? You're always bouncing off each other.
Yeah, absolutely.
Definitely, cool. So what would you say the key skills are needed for your role, or what you've learned in your role?
I think this answer is commonly attention to detail and things like that. which is of course true. You do need good attention to detail, because if there's a typo left in a book, or heaven forbid on the jacket, it is your fault.
Has it happened though before? I've seen typos in books, but I want to know if there was a typo.
I saw a horrendous one recently, and it was in like a big book. I can't remember which one. I was in a shop and I saw it, and it literally jumped out of the page at me. So that is quite bad, because if you reread something constantly over and over again, like by the third time your eyes go over a certain piece of text, you stop seeing certain mistakes, because your eyes just adjust, and that's kind of the danger when you're editing. But this was there was a typo in a chapter title, and so it was repeated on every single heading.
No.
Quite bad. So thankfully I've not done that, but I did once. Like I said, I didn't double check the measurements for a front cover, and when I saw the printed copies arrived, I gasped audibly, and I went, "Oh my god, what's happened?" And our production manager said, "It's fine, I didn't see it either." But basically what happened was the letters had run all the way to the edge of the book cover.
Oh no.
And it was completely misaligned. It looked hideous. We didn't shift many copies. It was quite horrible, but it's not like it was a leading title, which sounds bad to say. Every book is important, but I kind of was like, oof, at least it wasn't the bestseller, because that would have been bad.
Yeah, exactly. Okay.
But sorry, you asked about key skills.
Yeah.
But actually, very, very important is organizational, because you have a whole schedule to adhere to, and things need to go to print. And because you're kind of the start of the chain in editorial, everything depends on you. And if you're late with something, other people are late too. So it is really important to know how to manage your time and to be super, super organized, I would say. And if you thrive off of your to-do lists, then you're in the right department.
That's great, because people love organizational skills.
Yeah.
It's always one that I always get like spoken to, like, yeah, you definitely need to be organised. I'm like, good, because I'm organised, so I should be fine.
Yeah, you'll be grand.
I will. Hopefully one day. We'll see. So, going into the editorial process, obviously, because you're saying the role has changed so much in the past 10 years, is there more of a rapport now between the editor and the writer, would you say?
That's a good question. Definitely what I've noticed in non-fiction, because Hay House publishes mostly non-fiction, so that's what I tend to work on. There's less of a like the role is not so much you wait for writers to come to you with their work, and you pick the best, so to speak. A lot of times we'll go out and look for writers, because we know that a particular topic is doing well, or it's something that people are interested in, and there isn't a book on the topic, and so we will go find that writer, which is interesting. It's definitely not something I'd considered before. I just thought that trends emerged quite organically, and writers appeared sort of out of thin air when needed, but that's not really how it goes. And so there definitely is quite a lot of liaising with writers, not just the ones that we go looking for, but anybody that comes in. Oftentimes someone will come in and present a proposal, and we go, that's great, but it's not actually what we want. And then you work with the writer to develop their idea, or to turn it into something new, or they might like present a proposal that you think, this is fine, but that's actually not what you're really good at. Why don't you write about this other thing? And then you get them to do that. So there is actually so much toing and froing between editorial and the writers when you're at the very beginning of their publishing journey. And that's a really, really interesting process. I think sometimes very unexpected things come out of that.
Yeah, exactly. Because as you said, it's a lot of good communication skills with the author, because obviously they're talking to you about what they want and what you want. So it's finding the fine balance, isn't it?
Absolutely, yeah.
Cool. All right. So, what would your advice be to people that want to get into editorial, or like don't know where to start, or where would you own journey? How would you sort of recommend the first steps to
Oh
people?
man, I made so many mistakes, and I would like to help others avoid making the same ones. One crucial thing I did wrong was I wasn't on Twitter. And I
Yes.
honestly did not realize how crucial that was. At the time, I just thought, it's social media. I really don't see what it has to do with my work. Surely I just send in a CV and you can see that I have all this experience and these skills, and that is good enough. But society doesn't operate like that. And people like having that visibility now with their candidates. They like being able to see, oh, right, you've put in all this extra work. And it sounds really unfair that you have to put in so much work in your spare time. Like you have to turn some of your hobbies into another skill on your CV. And that's something what I resented at first. I was like, I work and then I go home. Surely that's good enough. But it does work a little bit differently now, and employers expect different things of you. So I would say get on Twitter and start networking. I hate that word, networking, but it is so important. So it is important to be on Twitter and speak to people in the industry. I wouldn't say like force yourself, but just kind of follow people, see what you're interested in, see who you like, um, whose tweets you like, and then maybe interact with them if it feels right. And I would also join things like the SYP, the Society of Young Publishers. I didn't do it when I was a student, even though I had the discount back then. I could have used that. But it seemed like it was just a thing that I didn't need to pay for. But I would join that because, again, you meet people and it shows your engagement. And if it sounds very performative to have to do stuff like that, honestly, just get started and it will start to feel very natural. If you're an introvert like me, it might seem like you have to do all this extra stuff on top of just getting work experience and just working diligently at getting the job you want. But it is really, really important, and it will help get you further ahead if you just start forging links early on. Even if you've never worked in publishing before, even if you're not doing a master's, and you don't have to do any sort of course to get into publishing, but you have to demonstrate that you're actually interested in the industry, that it's not just a kind of, oh, I like reading, I'll be an editor then, because it doesn't work like that, unfortunately.
No, it's making those connections early, and I think you don't realize how vast Twitter is until
Yeah.
you're on it.
Absolutely, and it feels really, really daunting when you start following everybody in the industry, and then all of a sudden you're following 1,000 people,
Yeah.
which is not helpful. So if you are on Twitter, I would say curate your list of people you're following a bit carefully. You don't have to follow every single indie press straight away, but maybe create a list of, for example, your favorite people in publicity, if you're interested in publicity, or your favorite editors, or you just, organizations that speak a lot about publishing, or provide courses or help or things like that. And then you can just go into your list and just check what those particular people have been saying, instead of going through your whole timeline and it's like 500 different accounts tweeting all day long, which is just too much.
Yeah, exactly. And I think what was weird about Twitter was that everybody kind of knows each other. So like once you kind of know one person, then you end up following them, and then you meet them in real, like at the SYP. You're like, this is weird. This is very strange when you meet
Yeah.
people from Twitter in real life.
And you're like, hey, I follow you. That's someone actually did that to me at an SYP event. I sat down with a friend, and she was talking to someone else, and I joined in the conversation. And he went, I follow you, and I went, you do? And it turns out that it was Carl from That Publishing Blog.
Oh, Carl, yes.
For years. Honestly, like he'd been on my radar for years, and he was one of the first people I followed again when I rejoined Twitter. So it does matter, and that kind of proved my point to me. I was like, oh, I should have been doing this so long ago.
Yeah, exactly. I think it was at London Book Fair. Like we all went out after like one of the events, and I was like, "There's so many people here." And Carl came. I was like, "Hello, Carl." It's like you're so so. I was like, "Oh yeah, I am." But she said it's good because then that means you get to have lots of conversation with like-minded people and everyone in the same position, so it's less daunting when you're
Yeah,
all speaking to people. I don't know if you found that.
absolutely. I'm not good with names and faces.
No,
So it's really
it's no.
helpful for me if I can sort of do pre-research,
Mm.
like before I go to an event, or I know I might meet certain people there, and I'm just like, let me just go on Twitter and see what you're about. Um, and like you say, then you start meeting people in real life, and it's so helpful just to see that it's not just you going to work and then going home again. It's everybody in the book industry. First of all, book people are really lovely people,
They are.
and they all like to chat. They all like to meet, and you hear stuff on the grapevine. You hear about opportunities quicker. I got to do a bit of a freelance piece of work through a friend and Carl, and that's how that sort of stuff gets going. So if you do get stuck in a job and you're looking to move, so many people that I know joined Hay House because they were employed somewhere else, and then knew people at Hay House who just went, "Hey, we need a person. Why don't you come and interview?"
That's great to hear, especially you said you're making those connections and they're so important.
Yeah.
It's definitely awesome. So the last question, you probably have heard this one. It stumps quite a few people. So you can either talk about your favourite book or a book that you've read quite recently that you'd like to recommend.
What is this evil question of a favourite book?
I know, this is one I had earlier. I was just like, someone was talking about their favourite book. I was like, they haven't read a book recently. So I was like, favourite book? I was like, okay, if you want to talk about it, favourite book.
I mean, the very boring answer would be Harry Potter because I've read them 15 times. So I'll talk about a different book then. The last novel I finished was City of Girls by Elizabeth Gilbert, who's one of my all-time favorite writers. And if you don't know who she was the author of Eat, Pray, Love. That was her really
Oh,
big book.
I loved that book. It was so
Love it
good.
so much. My copy is dog-eared. It is tattered. It has post-its through it. I just absolutely adore it. But she's also a brilliant novelist, and I love her TED Talks. And I love her book Big Magic, which is all about the creative process, which really revolutionized my creative process when I started to shift from this idea of the despairing artist in agony to no, the artist who loves the creative work and rejoices in it and all that stuff. But her novel City of Girls is just one of the most joyous things I've ever read. There's a lot of sex in it because it's about girls in the 1940s New York. The city basically empties itself of men because they've all gone to war, and things are hard. But it's also about the theatre scene and the showbiz, and it's very glitzy and glamorous, and it's about just girls doing whatever they want and not getting punished for it, which is really refreshing to read in times when, if a woman does one thing wrong, Twitter explodes. So it was just a fantastic novel to read. And I love it as well because she always researches her novels with great detail. She even went so far as to interview real showgirls, like who worked in the 1940s, and they're now like in their late, I don't know, 80s, 90s,
Yeah.
and they're still absolute spitfires. And I love the idea that those women are out there. So I would definitely recommend that one. It's just
Awesome.
fantastic.
That sounds great. Especially, I love it when people go into historical, like they research their novels so much, and it gives it that such authentic
Yeah.
feel. Because it means that they've actually gone and like they've looked into it so much.
But it doesn't read like a historical novel, which is,
No.
if you're used to like the Philippa Gregory kind of stuff, like this feels very different in a way. It feels sort of obviously like it's well researched in it, but it is also still topical, and it's in this really fresh first person narrative voice. And she is really good at her research. Like her previous novel, The Signature of All Things, which is also just this most epic and beautifully verbose novel. She researched it for I think like 4 years, and it just started because she got into gardening and then researched gardening and then got into botany and then decided, you know what, I'm just going to write this like 18th century epic novel about the first woman botanist who goes on these long sea voyages, and oh, I just love it.
Yeah, because it immerses you in the novel, doesn't it?
Completely.
Yeah, definitely.
Completely.
Cool. Well, thank you so much for coming on today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much. Yeah.
Thank you. Have a lovely evening.
You too.
Thanks.
Bye.
Thank you so much for listening. If you'd like to follow Clem on Twitter, @Clem Brûlé. You can get in touch with the podcast via Twitter @Novelem16 and use the hashtag Slothcast, or you can send me an email at slumberyslothbooknook@gmail.com. You can find the podcast on YouTube at slumberyslothbooknook, or you can access through Podbean and Apple Podcasts for an on-the-go experience. See you next week. Bye!